Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com.
Major General George G. Meade, Commander of the Army of the Potomac. I'm here to try to recap the condition of the Army of the Potomac after the Battle of Gettysburg. After three of the bloodiest days of the Civil War, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863, our army was shattered. We had sustained 24,000 casualties of killed, wounded, captured, and missing. And we came with an army of approximately 90,000, 92,000 of all branches and all arms. And we lost a quarter of that number. And of course, the Confederates suffered even more greatly. They were on the offensive, and in Civil War combat, the offense usually sustains larger casualties. They had 27,000 casualties. Their army was slightly smaller than ours, although fairly equal, with about 85 to 90,000 troops of all arms. So the fighting ended July 3rd, late in the afternoon. Darkness fell, and I attempted to organize a counterattack. It was not possible for many different reasons. The next day, a thunderstorm broke out, and it rained horribly the whole day, so no one could really maneuver. And under the cover of that thunderstorm, Lee decided to end his invasion of Pennsylvania and retreat back to his base in Virginia. We didn't know that. Lee had always had the very strange or very unexpected policy of showing up in your rear when you least expected him. And so we had to stay in position and try to assess what he was going to do next and govern our actions on Lee's maneuvers. So nothing really happened on July 4th. We tried to bring the wounded in, bury some of the dead on the field, and then July the 5th, we could determine that his army was moving. In what direction, we didn't know for sure. It could have been through the passes back to the Cumberland Valley to return home to Virginia, or it could have been to maneuver around our flank and come in on our right flank unexpected, as he did at Chancellorsville. So we had to stay in position, although I did send the cavalry in pursuit, and also elements of our infantry, the 6th Corps, toward Fairfield, and they were able to have a little skirmish and determine that he was indeed retreating across the gaps in the South Mountain Range. So it was July the 6th when I determined that we would pursue the enemy but not following behind him, because with a very small force he could have blocked and barricaded the gaps with a much smaller force and kept our whole army at bay so that he could then do what he wished. So instead I decided to order the Army of the Potomac south towards Middletown, Frederick, and then Middletown on the east side of the mountains, and then cross over the mountains to the west side to confront Lee at Williamsport, Maryland, where he was intending to cross the river. All the while he was being harassed by our cavalry. Now, we had a terrible problem with the wounded and the dead. And of course, Lee abandoned many of his wounded to us, to the mercy of his enemy, us. And also he left the dead to be buried by the victorious Union Army. So we undertook that effort as best we could, but we had to leave. So we did leave some attendants behind to attend to the wounded at the various field hospitals and also at Camp Letterman. I think you heard about Camp Letterman earlier. And they were going to be treated there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and actually months, until eventually the most of the majority either recovered, or died, or were sent to the large cities for the general hospitals such as Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. So we did the best to try to get our quartermasters to clean up the detritus of the battle. Eventually, our quartermasters were able to gather 24,000 muskets from the field that had been abandoned by our own troops and the Confederate troops. And of those 24,000, over half were actually loaded. So they had been actually lost or dropped or before the soldier had fired his own weapon or the weapon. So gathering up all the equipment, burying the dead, caring for the wounded, getting them into shelter, that took up a lot of time and concern for us on Army headquarters. But the most important thing was what to do about Lee. Yes, he had been defeated, but he was not certainly in any position where he was going to be able to be defeated and bagged or captured. And in fact, as he started to retreat and approached his home state of Virginia, of course, he got stronger and stronger because there were reserves coming over the river and bringing supplies and bringing ammunition for him. So he decided that he was ahead of us by several days. We had to go 75 miles to get to Williamsport. He only had 40 miles to get to Williamsport. So he entrenched on a very strong line along the Potomac River south of Williamsport, Maryland. And he found some very good ground called the Downsville line. He entrenched and he waited for our army to approach. And he wanted to succor me and my army into attacking him in a strong position, just as we had done to him at Pickett's Charge. And I wasn't about to play that game, the game of allowing him to shoot at us from entrenchments. And so I had another council of war. I wanted to have the opinion of my brother officers and find out what they wanted to do. Many of them, one had been killed, General Reynolds, some had been wounded, General Hancock and others, and therefore they were commanders that I didn't even know. So I had to have their opinion since they were going to lead the troops into action at Downsville. This is July the 12th, July the 13th, 1863. Finally, I determined, as an engineer, I know ground. I did a reconnaissance and I was able to find a weak spot in the Confederate line. And then I ordered the army up on July the 14th, 1863, to attack the Confederates with a chance of victory because we had a weak spot. We found a weak spot. When we reached the lines at dawn and then at 7, the troops found that they were vacated. They were empty. They were gone. Lee had escaped across the Potomac River, which had been swollen with rain, but he was able to tear down some buildings and build some bridges and some floats and so on, and get his army primarily across the Potomac. However, he left a very strong rear guard behind under General Pettigrew, about 2,000 men in the rear guard. We captured, killed, or forced most of them to flee, captured many of them, and we killed General Pettigrew, their commander. So we did have some success. Now, I have been accused of not following up Lee after the battle, and of course that is incorrect because, as you can see, we did follow him to Williamsport until he got across the river into Virginia territory. And of course, the campaign is going to continue. I'm still in command of the Army of the Potomac, but I was criticized very severely for allowing Lee to escape. Of course, those who criticized me weren't on the scene and didn't know what was happening and what I had to deal with. So we lost total, both sides being Americans, in the 3 bloodiest days of the American Civil War, 51,000 casualties, killed, wounded, captured, and missing. And a tremendous bloody, but a victory for the Union, and we preserved the Union and Lincoln. Thank you.